Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. We are very excited to be able to share the progress that we've made for the Volta Avenue Artist Studios project. My name is Angelica Arias. I am the program coordinator for the Community Design Works program at the Neighborhood Design Center. I specifically work at the Prince George's County office. For those who may not know, the Neighborhood Design Center is a nonprofit organization that provides tools, expertise, and partnerships necessary to realize neighborhood or community visions. We support broad participation in the evolution of the built environment, positioning historically disinvested neighborhoods to attract future investment. We wouldn't be able to do this work without the help of our volunteer network, which is made of designers from diverse professional backgrounds, from landscape designers to architects, and interior designers to city planners and facilitators. Our volunteers help produce such excellent work that help visualize our community partners' visions. So with that said, here are our main project partners, Nobody Properties, Gateway CDC, the town of Brentwood, and of course our volunteer design team. So for the agenda for today's presentation, we will start with introductions. We will then give a recap of the site context, design, purpose, and goals, and the engagement done for this project. We will then move on to concept ideas, walk you all through test fit layout plans, and share some design visuals that the team has prepared for you all today. We will also have time at the end to answer any questions you may have. So as we go through the presentation, feel free to write your questions down on paper or share your questions in the chat. And we will make sure to leave time at the end to provide answers. So we have prepared an icebreaker question for you all. As we do a quick round of introductions, we'd like for you all to feel free to answer the icebreaker question when you introduce yourself, or you can feel free to answer it in the chat after you introduce yourself. So no pressure, but we would like to kind of get to know a little bit more about you. So the question is, if you could choose an artist to meet, whether from the present or past, who would it be and why? And here we have the team. Since I have already introduced myself, I will let the rest of the team introduce themselves, starting off with Marcus Monroe, if you are okay with that, Marcus.
Sure. Marcus Monroe, board president for Gateway CDC, Community Development Corporation, and then also a council member of the town of Brentwood. And I'll acknowledge also, I believe we have some council members for Brentwood. I see Vice Mayor Stephen Leggin, Council Member Kiana Taylor, and I thought I saw Council Member Lauren Robb. So welcome everyone and thank you.
Thank you. Dylan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'll go. Dylan French, principal of Nobody Properties. We have 90,000 current square feet, and this will take us up to about 160, 170,000 square feet. I think 150, 160,000 square feet of total art studios in the Gateway Arts District. Marcus did not pick an artist, so I'm going to call him out for not participating in the icebreaker. Unless the fellow council members count. But otherwise, I would probably have to just immediately say Jimi Hendrix, because it's one of those guys that every time I look at with fresh eyes, it just blows me away every time on everything that he did. So yeah, there we go.
Right.
You're gonna have to call people's names because no one's volunteering.
Yeah. From the team, Alex, do you want to start off?
Sure. My name is Alexander Thomas. I'm an architect at Gensler, one of the volunteer members on the team. My background before joining Gensler was mostly in hospitality, retail, design, and then currently working in our public sector studios, doing a mix of kind of government projects, some education, K-12, and library projects. We have a couple library innovations in progress right now in PG County for the PG library system. If I had to choose an artist to meet, honestly, I would probably like go really, I don't know how out there this is. I would say like somebody like Leonardo da Vinci, even though I don't speak Latin, but just, I mean, you think about all the incredible classic contributions somebody like that has had to, both art, architecture, and design, science, everything. I'm like, if I could get like a Latin translator, maybe that would be the a fun conversation.
Cool. Lindsay, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Lindsay Neer. I am an interior designer and I'm at IR St. Croix. I do higher education work, and I have also done work with the library system in Prince George's County, which has been really great. So happy to be working again with NDC in the area. And I don't think it would be my favorite artist, but I guess an artist I'd like to meet is Marcel Duchamp, the guy who wrote his name on the sink in the toilet. I have so many questions for him, and I don't think we'd like each other, but I think it would be an interesting conversation.
And then Kim.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Kim Gaybosh. I am an interior designer at Gensler. And I think the artist that I would pick, just because this was the first one that came to my head, was Edgar Degas. He did all of like the impressionist paintings of ballerinas and the little sculptures of ballerinas. And I'm a dancer, so I would want to, I don't know, I would want to learn how he did his little sculptures so then I could make my own.
Nice. So we can do a quick round of introductions from the rest of the folks who are here present in the meeting. I'm just going to go based off of the participant list I have here on my screen. Glenn Dove, Fraser.
Hi, I'm a resident of Brentwood, and I just wanted to chime in to see what this actually was going to entail, what this was about.
Nice. Thank you for joining today.
Certainly.
Lauren Rock. Sorry if I mispronounced your last name.
You also taught me grabbing dinner.
No worries. You can introduce yourself in the chat.
Hey, I'm a council member for the town of Brentwood, trying to sneak in some dinner between activities and events. I'm so sorry. Excuse me. So I'm attending based on the fact that this wonderful art space is opening up in our town, and I'm interested to hear about the plans and how we can help and how we can connect more residents to the space and also support the artists that are going to be using the space. And if I was going to think about one artist that I like, I would think about Nan Golden, who is a photographer who took some really great photos in the 70s and 80s of real folks living in a real time period. So that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Monique Martin.
Good evening, everyone. I'm also a resident of the town of Brentwood, and I'm attending this meeting this evening, so I'm curious to see how the Volta Avenue space is going to be transformed, and I'm just curious to see what the plans going forward are going to be with the space.
Okay, thank you. Peter Siegel.
Hi, I'm Peter Siegel. I'm the owner of Artisan 4100 and Studio 3807 and Mixed Food Hall, and just interested to see what Dylan has planned for that building. I've been watching it for a long time, so I'm excited to see something happen with it. And the artist I'd like to meet would be Joanna Blake, who was an artist in the Gateway Arts District who tragically passed away before I could get a chance to meet her.
Thank you. And I think last but not least, Stefan Legan.
I believe you're on mute. You're the first one to fall victim to the mute button.
You know, I won't be the last time I do that. Thanks, Dylan. But I was gonna say that I was handing out flyers this weekend, letting folks know about the project, and folks are so excited. I think it's been 20 years or more that this building has been empty. And I mean, I could have told them it was their birthday. They were so excited. So thank you to the team. Thank you to Dylan. Thanks to everyone for volunteering their time to make a meaningful change in our community. I'm excited to be here. Glad to have you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think I may have missed one person. iPhone, I don't know who that may be. Maybe it's someone I've already called on, but if I haven't called on you, please feel free to introduce yourself.
Hi, Angelica. This is Jackie Goodall, and
Hi,
I'm the
Jackie.
town manager for the town of North Brentwood, for those who may not know me. And I am here probably as the lone representative for North Brentwood, being nosy about property that's abutting our town, and that I also have been watching and just wondering what was going on. And if I had a chance or choice of my favorite artist, I happen to know him very well because he was my uncle, who was a classical pianist and a concert composer, and he's the one that introduced me to classical music. And so I've had my favorite person in my life, most of my life, before he passed.
Aww. Well, thank you for joining us, Jackie. We're happy to have you here. All right, and I'll share the artist I would choose to meet. Mine is David C. Driscoll. Some of you might be familiar with who he is. David C. Driscoll was an artist, a curator, a mentor, a scholar. He devoted a lot of his life to contributing to the field of African American art and mentoring African American artists. He was known for breaking barriers and making others feel welcome. And so I would choose him because he made others feel a sense of belonging in the spaces that he was in, and also because he had a passion for trees, and I love trees. So yeah, I've actually been learning a lot about his life and work over the past 2 years through the David C. Driscoll Park project that Neighborhood Design Center has been working on with the city of Hyattsville. So the project has built a lot of curiosity in me, and I would definitely choose him. Okay, thank you all for sharing. And if you didn't answer the question, feel free to answer it in the chat. So we want to acknowledge that maybe the name Nobody Properties may be new to some of you. So we wanted to take some time today to share with you all who they are. So Nobody is a WDC creative and market intelligence agency based in Blagden Alley, Washington, D.C. Nobody Properties is a certified disability-owned business enterprise founded exclusively for the development of art studios in Gateway Arts District. So Nobody Properties has developed a track record in the Gateway's Arts District for providing below-market studio space to working artists. And since 2020, Nobody Properties has acquired, stabilized, and improved nearly, and we should have updated this because I did hear you earlier, Dylan, at least 90,000 square feet of neglected commercial space across 6 buildings for artists on long-term leases, targeting 60 to 65% of the market rate. All right, and did want to acknowledge that Nobody Properties has played a key role as a collaborator on this project by sharing insight, expertise, and resources throughout the project. So we are so thankful to have them as a collaborator. And with that, I will pass the mic over to Kim Gabosh, who will begin to talk about a little bit more about the property and the project.
Yeah, so sounds like a lot of y'all are familiar with this building. It is on the corner of Rhode Island Ave and Volta Ave, and it's got a great street presence. It's You can see in the first photo, it's right there by that stoplight. It also has a neighboring building that you can see in the third photo. It's a chicken shop. And it's got, you know, despite it being a busy intersection, it's got a good street presence, but could definitely use some updating. So we'll show you some renderings later on that show some concepts for what this could look like. But that's its site context. And then some more details about the building itself. It's approximately 61,000 square feet. It's been unoccupied for and unmaintained, as you all know, for about 15 years. And it is in the Gateway Arts District, which is why we are looking at this for an artist studio. So some of the design purpose behind this project is situating Prince George's County as this culture center for the region, and to keep regional artists in the area. Something that Dylan mentioned to us early on in the project is that artists have been getting pushed out further and further from DC. So there's the DC Arts District, and then there's the Baltimore Arts District, and this is really this, you know, part of the Gateway Arts District is creating an arts district in Brentwood that supports the artists of this area and keeps them here, and then also creates a really rich artist community in the town of Brentwood as well. And then just a little vicinity map. There's a lot of things kind of shown on here, but the main ones that we wanted to point out is kind of the location to a lot of the other artist studios in the area, including the other Nobody Properties spaces that are highlighted in blue that are kind of to the southwest of the Volta Ave site. Okay.
Hi, Raya. We didn't see you in the introductions.
Okay, everyone should be seeing the slideshow. Can y'all still see it?
Yes.
Perfect. Skip through all of this. That is a really dense slide, so I'm not surprised it caused your computer to crash. Okay, Alex, go away.
So at a high level, some of the goals, you know, that we've gleaned with this project and kind of the overall, you know, intent behind this project, obviously kind of highlighted in bold here, renovating the facilities for artist use, creating a community flex space. There's kind of two components to this building. It's sort of dual-sided, an existing warehouse, the former furniture warehouse, and then sort of a more open industrial garage space. So I think the thought being that that garage space or a portion of it could be used for, you know, pop-up galleries, community events, concerts, other events, providing sustainable building for the community. So incorporating solar, incorporating stormwater mitigation strategies, other things that can help bolster the idea of stormwater, of sustainable design, becoming a cornerstone of the Gateway Arts District. Again, mentioning that, you know, this has such a broad and great street presence there off Rhode Island and Volta Ave. So really playing that up and using that to our advantage, and then establishing the destination for art lovers in PG County and DC, as mentioned earlier. We know that, you know, this is kind of the goal is to provide below market rates to attract both local artists from Brentwood and from PG County, as well as providing space for some DC area artists that may otherwise be forced to leave the area and move as far away as Baltimore. So as part of our community engagement with this, on the front end, we visited a good number of existing artist studios within North Brentwood and within the Gateway Arts District. So we saw a couple of Dylan's existing studios. We saw a couple of the other studios. Here you see in the bottom right some photos from those existing artist studio visits. We don't have to kind of go through all of the questions, but in general, you know, we asked a wide array of questions, interviewed many of these artists in these existing studios to find out what was important to them, why they come to their studios to work, for instance, versus working at home, you know, what they like about the space, what they don't like about the space, what's working, what's not. I think one of the most overarching things that we heard from people, why they come to their studio space, is because they said, you know, we just can't do this at home. Either we don't have the space, we don't have the facilities, we don't have the room. You know, we have a partner who we might drive crazy if we were painting in the living room. So having that, you know, satellite space to work in, to produce their art, to really focus, and actually, you know, kind of treat this as, you know, not just their labor of love, but also in a lot of cases, you know, kind of as their true labor and profession, was important for them. And so, you know, providing amenities for them, whether it's sinks, cleanup space, mounting space on walls, access to natural light through skylights or windows, you know, that was some of the feedback we got throughout our engagement with the artists in the existing spaces. So now we get into some of the more key design drivers that influence the project specifically in the way that we develop the plans and the overall design. So being the artists, the number of artist studios specifically. So kind of we had a target in mind for what we wanted to hit, both in number of studios and in sizes of studios. We're responding to the existing conditions of the building, you know, whether it's structural elements, whether it's the geometry, whether it's, you know, the existing locations of stairs and life safety components, and then taking into account the history and context of the site. So knowing that this was formerly kind of a warehouse space where they were doing furniture, staging and furniture manufacturing, and this idea of kind of efficiency and, you know, the idea that it kind of being a nicely shaped building to work in really lends itself to a more modular geometry and modular planning. And I'll let Kim, I'll turn it back over to Kim to speak a little bit more about, you know, that modularity and how we actually got into the planning of the space.
Yeah, so like Alex said, this building is very efficient in its structure and its layout. There wasn't a whole lot going on in the middle of the building, just some existing conveyor belts, which we can, you know, remove and fill in and create one large open floor plate to then fill. And Dylan's focus when we were looking at planning this building was to be as efficient as possible, so that way he could achieve those below market rate rents with, you know, as much space as possible, while also maintaining a level of flexibility that could provide for changing requirements and needs by different tenants, and also different mediums of art that people would want to create in this building. So we looked at the existing structure, and a lot of this is just going to be like little designery speak, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but we looked at the structure of the building and kind of the layout of the columns, which is what's driving this grid. And we basically came up with this grid system here that is only broken by existing structural things like stairs and shafts. With the circulation pattern, which is this red, so that would be like your corridors, your hallways, which is noted by these red arrows here, and then the blue ones over here. And we basically figured out how we could stack those and change them to create a flex space. So then in 3D, this is kind of how it started to look. So you have the module that has, we call it the modified module because you can put 2 of these or 3 of these or 4 of these cubes together to create different sized studios, which keeps that flexibility, as I mentioned previously. And then this is kind of how it translates across an entire floor plate. And we even have some here that are half of a cube, so they're even smaller studios for artists that need small space. And then as we looked at the whole building, we took into account, like I said, different mediums that could be in here, and also different qualities of the building. So the lower levels don't have as much access to light because of the large space on the left, which is being planned for as an event space. So there's less light there. And then as you go up, there will be more access to light, also just by the nature of it being a higher floor. And then focusing more of the loud, dirty work and some of the smaller spaces on the lower level, while working up to larger spaces and more clean work. There won't be anything too dirty in here, like no, we saw like sculptures and woodworking, and it seems like that's going to stay out of this building. But things that might require loading docks and things is what we would potentially have on the lower levels. And then as you go up, that can be more of like your painting and things. So, clean painting is not a clean medium by any means, but it's not, requiring a loading dock as often as something that uses a medium that's a bit heavier. And then this is a look at some preliminary test fits that we've done. This is not final by any means, but this is kind of our first pass at looking at how this would fit into the overall building. We have some core elements that have been added in. Like Alex said, there's amenities here that tenants like to have. So we have cleanup sinks, things, place for building storage, IT provisions for spaces like that. Mechanical will also have to be added here. So we've just allotted some space for that. But overall, this is kind of the layout of the space. And then over here, you'll see the large event space with some restrooms and a catering kitchen.
Here we get into some 3D visuals of the space. So this is kind of showing that event space and that, existing what's kind of called like the garage over on the left side of the plan, as Kim was mentioning. We envision this being really a multi-use space. The thing we like about this image is, it shows that there can be a dialogue between both sides of the building, right? So if you could envision maybe hosting like a fashion show in the event space, as we kind of are showing here. If you have artists who are working with textiles or working with mixed media, doing fashion, putting together, dresses or any kind of, I'm sorry, what's the word? The word for, clothing and I'm drawing a blank right now. But but if you have artists who are working with textiles and clothing, they could very easily utilize some of the existing openings from that warehouse side to the event space side. It kind of creates that natural transition. Also, if you have artists who are just hosting a pop-up gallery, something like, an art night where they want to showcase some of their paintings, some of their art, it's very easy to make that transition again from that kind of artist studio side over to the event space side. It's not just going to be restricted to artists as well. As mentioned earlier, we envision this also kind of being a community space. So whether it's hosting shared community events, things like weddings, gatherings, social events, concerts, music. Again, the idea is that this really would be sort of a space for artists, for the community, for everyone to take advantage of and be able to use. And here's an image of the exterior of the building looking from that Rhode Island and Volta Avenue intersection, kind of showing, obviously, we know the outside of the building is going to require some cleanup. But in addition, we think there are moments for increasing its presence. You can kind of see here that entry off of Rhode Island and Volta Ave, whether it's sprucing that up with some glass, kind of bumping that out and giving it a little bit more presence from the actual building as it is today. And then Dylan has some existing relationships with a lot of muralists and some artists who I think, could potentially provide some artwork for the exterior of the building. Obviously, none of this is final. Again, all just placeholders, but kind of showing really the increased street presence and pedestrian presence that we can give this building. You'll see that we're showing some bike racks over there. You know, we know there is an adjacency to, I believe it's the Metropolitan Bike Trail. So, you know, we know folks could potentially be commuting here via bike, be walking here from the neighboring areas. So again, really increasing that pedestrian and street presence, increasing the visual presence, you know, with murals or art on the sides of the building. Yeah. So I think as far as visuals go, that's what we have. That's kind of where we are. Obviously, you know, we are, as mentioned, we are architects, interior designers, and designers. So to this point, we've kind of taken the project through conceptual design. There are obviously questions, you know, about engineering and kind of more in the weeds things that haven't been answered yet. But at a high level, you know, we have a plan. We've kind of done a preliminary code analysis and looked at all of the life safety components and what would be required to bring the building up, you know, to meet modern building codes and modern requirements for life safety. So we've done our diligence on that end, and, you know, given what we feel is a new life to this old property. So we can, I think,
You guys want
Mark,
to do the Q&A?
yeah, I was going to say,
okay.
I think Marcus, Dylan, you all may have been posed to field some questions from the team here.
Sure, so I can help manage. So folks, if you can just use the hand raise feature or just type a comment or question into the chat. Not call on you. So I see Jackie, I know your iPhone. I'm going to call on you first.
Oh, thank you. I didn't know whether you was going to see me or not. So, I mean, I think this is just a wonderful, wonderful project because on our side and in my mind, the alley behind the building between North Brentwood and Brentwood, I have submitted some plans a couple of years ago to have that alleyway be used as like an area that people could just meet in the alley and maybe sell stuff or just meet and just eat or whatever they wanted to do in that alley. But I also wanted to see on the backside of that building a mural. So having this as an artist studio would really fit well with what we had envisioned that part of the alley to be. So I'm really happy to see this.
Thank you for that. And I guess Alex, can you go back a slide to the corner shot of the building?
I think Kim is driving right
Oh,
now.
Kim. Sorry
No,
for
it's
that.
okay. I'm like, how do I page up? I have to just exit. Here we go.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to make sure. So what Jackie was describing is like where those trees are. If you ever drive by now on Current today, there's an alley on the backside that the two towns share. And what she's saying is like, can we open that up essentially? And so I just want to make sure everybody that's may not be familiar with it understands what we're describing. But thank you for that, Jackie.
I'll
Dylan,
just
go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add that I think opening that alley is just a very, very important thing, even as we look at like fire code and fire compliance for having our emergency exits and stuff. Reopening that alley to be a public easement and getting the gates and the trucks and things that are blocking it is a major priority for us. And so,
oh no. I wasn't thinking of that kind of opening up. I was thinking more of a livable or a usable alley so that people could, like the church. I've talked to the church about it because they don't have space to have like a public meetings or if they wanted to have like a festival or something. They don't really have space like that.
No, I'm with you. I'm saying open it up because there are trucks that are parked there permanently right now that block the alley that don't allow, and there's gates across it, and that's.
Oh yes, well
yeah,
that is something that Brentwood and North Brentwood are going to have to work together so that we can take care of that little issue. But you're absolutely right. That alley needs to be opened up all the way. Yes.
Yeah, like as a pedestrian sort of gathering place is more. I'm not trying to be running 18-wheelers.
Oh, okay.
Just we have to open it up for fire exits and different things like
like
that.
a pedestrian gathering place, like, because there's a lot of them in, I guess, Baltimore and Chicago that I have seen that I thought that would be just perfect. So yeah, as long as we're not talking about parking trucks and delivering stuff in there.
No, we want fewer trucks parked back there.
Okay, I agree with you on that. We can work on that.
All right, looking forward to working with you on that, Jackie. Any questions? I was looking at the chat. I didn't see anything come in yet. I'm a former teacher, so I can start calling on folks too and pressure everybody.
With a group this small, you have to just start.
I just got to do it. So Peter, I want to call on Peter because, not in a bad way. I know Peter and I have talked about this before, but activating the corridor has sort of been a big challenge as we still try to infill and create things that create more foot traffic and get people coming down and excited and, stopping in places, getting coffee, getting food, and etc. Is there anything that sparks your imagination when you see this?
No, I think this is going to be a great addition to Rhode Island Avenue. And just as you said, Marcus, to put some more activity and life on the street. It's been nice since we started our two developments to see the change on Rhode Island Avenue. And that change is that I see people, running down Rhode Island Avenue on foot, not in cars anymore. I also see people with strollers, walking dogs. I mean, so there's a lot more activity that's happening, and creating more activity and more foot traffic through the area would certainly be very, very helpful. I do have a question of what is the parking situation, because it's just it's an issue throughout Gateway Arts District.
So I'll defer to you, Dylan. I know you had talked about some ideas and thoughts on how you
hard ones, right? Yeah, it is a problem to be solved, but we have sort of enough contingencies right now that we anticipate that it shouldn't be a problem by the time we're operational. There's only about 18 sort of surface spots in front of the building going across where like that white truck is right there in the mock-up. But there is also some illegal construction that abuts the building, and once we close on that, we are going to be approaching the impinging property owners about possibly buying those, just because they literally have like razor wire and things that shouldn't be there. And so to buy those properties and clean up some of that illegal construction, that would open up some of our parking abilities there. The chicken restaurant, similarly, we would like to go after, because not to make any, I don't think they sell a lot of chicken. But yeah, so like, and then beyond that, there's even the gravel lot that the Dutch Mill Catering has that's actually in North Brentwood. So between some of these options, there's a lot that's actually across Rhode Island that's for sale. That's not terribly unreasonable. But between those, I think we're going to be able to find a way to do it. Additionally, like, we are very specifically trying to bring in people from Hyattsville and people who live in the Hidden District as tenants for this, and have certain goals that we have to meet with the county funds that we've received. But I would say of the 20 or so tenants that have already committed, 4 or 5 of them were expressly wanting to bike there. So between all those options, we're gonna get it solved while we're getting the project built.
All right. Maybe Monique or Gwen, as residents, do you any thoughts or concerns or ideas or any comments at all about the project? All right. And then I'm gonna round it off to the council members, Vice Mayor or Councilmember Rauk. Any thoughts, questions, or last comments before we wrap up?
Hey, Marcus. Hey,
Hey, hey.
folks. Yeah, I'm really sorry. I'm picking some folks up from the airport. And so I'm hopping on in the car, but I sustainability practices in the building. I'm not sure if they can talk to any of that.
So I think we caught part of it. You said it. Are there any? Can we speak to the
sorry.
sustainability practices in the building?
Yeah, some of this. Some of the sustainability. I really like seeing the modules that are going to be inside the building. I'm wondering if they're, I'm sure they're up to code and everything, but are they also made from like, earth-friendly materials?
So you cut out, but I can. I think
solar panels on the top of the building. Oh, sorry.
There we go.
Yeah, there's going to be stormwater practices that you guys might be looking at, and also solar panels on the top of the building. So I'm also just interested to hear a little bit about that kind of activity as well, if you have the time to share that.
Yeah, I can jump on this. So we've done a lot of solar installations on our other buildings so far. We're still actually adding some of those to the Otis Street compound, but the 38th Street compound has 80 kilowatts of solar on it already, and we're contracted to do the other ones in Otis Street. It just takes a little bit longer than you ever think it does when you're doing them that big. The stormwater management has been a concern that I've been communicating with Marcus about in terms of some possibility of some state funds in the future coming there. But even as we look at what we can do with the alleyway that we were speaking about earlier in terms of permeable pavement and different things like that, so we have less runoff and all those sorts of things. We've explored options on greening the roof, just because solar is not as profitable in that location as it is on the ones that are near the railroad tracks. But it'll be kind of a mixture there. The interior stuff is sort of twofold. Partially, it is about reuse and sort of adapting what is there. There is a really strong steel structure internally, but it has a lot of wood decking on the floors that have a lot of great character. Some of them need to be patched and fixed because there's rot or there's some previous roof leaks and things, but we're trying to save a lot of that stuff. But from a wall construction and those things, a lot of that's going to come down to like fire code and usage and just the sheer scale of it, because while we're trying to keep the prices down, we have to sort of be economical in how we approach everything. So I'm not going to be gold plating anything in a proverbial sense, but the drywall is a fire rated material and all those sorts of things. And the building is currently sprinkled. Depending on the assessments that we get back for the current sprinkler system versus having to replace it, will sort of change. There's some fungibility there from a budgeting standpoint, where if our current sprinklers pass the muster with just getting new heads on them, then we might have literally an extra $100,000 that we can go back in and try to be more thoughtful on how we do those things. But in general, just the fact that we're reusing a building is a significant environmental savings, because there are a few things that are more destructive than new construction and demolishing old stuff. So the carbon footprint of not putting in new concrete, not doing all those sorts of things, just the notion of adaptive reuse is probably the most single impactful thing that we're doing from a sustainability standpoint.
1,000%. And I really appreciate you walking through some of that information and the specifics about your previous buildings and also this building. And you're absolutely right. Just from the ground base of what you're doing is so important, and it is absolutely the key. Sorry. Okay, let me see if I can turn the volume down. My other question real quick for you is are there any plans for working with I know you have buildings in Mount Rainier, but is there any kind of plan to work with the other artist spaces like Red Dirt, other artist spaces? So I'm sure there's not really, we might not want to compete with those artists and, pull them away from that space, but attract other types of artists who are looking for homes. Do you feel like you have a large enough population to pull from that it isn't going to affect the existing capacity and the existing stability? Yeah, thanks.
So I'm going to answer this in a really long-winded way, which is completely not my style, obviously. I've talked with Margaret quite a bit. I'm very respectful of Red Dirt. Red Dirt used to be at the actual Otis Street property before she has her had her firehouse. Um, the biggest pet peeve I have in general of driving through the arts district is that you don't see art, and to try to make these things stand out, and even if they're not on the main drag, to be something that people recognize, or become sort of a destination type of facility. We're doing 25 murals at the Otis Street project. We're 4 in. I've got 4 more coming in the next few months, and are sort of piecemealing that out because some county funds fell through that had been promised with the previous council. But that's just coming out of pocket because we like it, and we've got good stuff going with it. So in my mind, the Otis Street is 56,000 square feet. Red Dirt, I believe, is in the 16,000 range over the 2 floors. Obviously, Joe's Emporium. That's I sort of see these as big cornerstones of what the arts district can be as we do more of these infill things that are a bit high profile, and all that sort of stuff. So I think just the cultural well-being of any community is needful of artists, and as Marcus and I think Alex were even saying that, like, the what I don't want is Baltimore to become DC's arts district. And so I know it's Prince George's County, but there is sort of a cultural center here that I think we can nurture and not kick the artist out after 5 years, which is what has happened in every other area. So to your other question about the artist community, like, yes, we're in contact with them. We work within the sort of open studios things. I think there's a huge need for the event space that we're looking at, and the demand for that, which does not really exist in any sort of affordable way. My friend runs the Howard Theater, and I was talking to her recently. She's like, "What does it cost to rent the Howard Theater for a night?" She's like, $40,000. And I was like, "Okay, so the fact that I'm aiming for like $4,000 for maybe like a week in this place is going to be good." She's like, "You'll be booked constantly." There's a DC Arts Studios in Northeast DC called Stable. Several of the founders of Stable, which got funded by the city, have literally given me letters of intent to take studios in this building because DC has gotten so expensive. Several of my friends are in the 52 O Street building in DC. That building is currently $36 a foot triple net, and we're targeting this building to be on an average of $13.50 per foot triple net. So literally a third of the cost of what you're paying 4 miles away. I've got some friends at the Montana Motor Inn studios. They pay 26 a foot, so we're going to be half what they'll be, and they're a mile and a half away. So in general, cheap is the thing that artists put above everything, because it is very difficult to make a living doing art, and they need to go to those places, which is why they get kicked out of every place else, because they don't get kicked out, they get priced out. And so having the model be sustainable economically by the fruits of their labor is what prevents them from being kicked out. Because if you look at places like, and I'm not denigrating any of them, but like maybe it's called the Torpedo Factory, right? That is subsidized by the county or the city over there. And that just kind of becomes a means of control. And the moment they want fewer artists and more restaurants, they just change the way their subsidies work. And then all of a sudden, the 50,000 square feet of art space got dropped to 30,000, and there's a bunch of new restaurants. And I don't like that. Like, I'm going to be the stubborn old man who ties balloons to my roof because all the buildings around me are pissing me off. So yeah, so I think it is invaluable to a community to have culture and frankly just weirdos and all the people that we love that work in the arts, and that's sort of where we're putting our money where our mouth is. The neighborhood is going to look very different in 30 or 40 years, and I'm not going to be 70 yet, so you know, it's a long-term play that we're making here. The buildings have a lot of life left in them. I don't like tearing things down that are 20 or 30 years old just to be able to build new stuff. And to be perfectly frank, the economics of new construction do not work with art studios, because when you do new construction, you have to hit certain metrics from a pricing standpoint, and that's just not where artists can do it. So the only way that we can go to these places are finding things that nobody cares about, which is when a building's sitting there for 15 years, that's how we go about it. So I'm very big on promoting adjacent communities that I call to art spaces. We have a very, very large involvement with the skateboarding community, which is very sort of art adjacent, and the music and the live performance community and all these sorts of things. And these were things that really defined DC culture at a time. And then when DC got real expensive, DC lost all its culture again. And so some of us moved here because Fugazi was from here. And like, you're like, where are all those places anymore? And this is where we're trying to put them back together. So it is, yeah. So then the last point I'll make is that I walked through the new space and the current spaces that we have with a guy named Michael Orlov, who is the head of community involvement for the National Endowment for the Arts. He's the number 2. We walked him through there 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he basically offered to put the announcement on his email list, and he goes, I can fill this building in 2 days for you. so yeah, just the amount of people who text me completely unprompted because somebody gave them my phone number to ask if I have any available studio space. I think that is, I get 2 or 3 of those a week. I think the diversity of the buildings that we have between the 38th Street building and the Otis Street buildings, those are much more industrial spaces. And I think they'll probably end up being a shift for some folks where painters want to come to this place that has high ceilings and light, and the people who need to run welders and 3-phase stuff is going to sort of circulate back and forth. I've got a couple of my tenants in one of the buildings that already wants to move to the new one, and I've got I think, and every now and again somebody reaches out and is like, I want to run a wood shop, and it's like, oh, I got that building someplace else. That's not what this building's going to be good for, because you're going to have a lot of shared air and sort of circulation and just sort of the management of HVAC and all those things. We can do messy, but we can't really do dusty super well in a big shared space. So yeah, so that is a very concise answer to your question.
I really appreciate you taking the time. I really do appreciate the explanation. Very helpful. Great information. Thanks.
All right.
So we were joined by Alana and Angelica. I don't know how we're doing on time, but let me see if we can get one last question in. Alana was curious about movement space, and I see Alana, maybe you wanna say your question out loud for folks.
Yeah, I do. Hi, it's Elena actually, and I'm a resident of North Brentwood, but also that's okay, but also run a hip hop art studio, which is headquarters in North Brentwood, but technically most of our what we do is not directly in North Brentwood. I was gonna ask about movement space, but as he started talking, I realized it was more, he's looking at more visual art based on what I'm hearing at least. And I was gonna say to myself, like, gosh, I feel like there's so much visual art opportunities in this area. And I really do think it would be a really great opportunity to have some kind of movement space in there. I just don't know, like, now that, when you're talking about like kind of airways and how that works. But that was my first question. And then when I started hearing you talk, and you're like, oh, we have people that are interested, and then you were talking about people moving from DC, like, is there some way to like give preference to people who are in this community first? Like, I feel like that always kind of happens, where most of the people who can jump right away and pay the money are the people who really don't need the space. I mean, they have the money. So it's like, I'm just wondering, how are you going to make it affordable for artists and more, if you already have a long list of people who want to get in, then ultimately it's just another space for people who already have assets and have, so I don't know. I'm just, that was my first instinct when I heard that. It was like, oh, it's gonna be a whole nother space for new DC artists, when there are people in PG County and maybe even North Brentwood who could also utilize space. So I'm just wondering how you consider all of that. And a lot of times these decisions are made by people who are not specifically in the arts. So I just, and most of it is financial. So I'm just trying to figure out, are there any ways in which you're looking at metrics to make sure that it's going to be a space for people, that maybe will not be able to afford, a studio in DC. So they're here because they can't afford a studio in DC. So to make it, kind of filled with people in DC who can afford a studio but just want more space, I'm nervous about that. So yeah. I just want to see if somebody can speak to that.
So let me answer your first question, then I'll come back to that one, just because I'll forget the first one if I don't do that. Kim,
okay.
Can you actually pop back to a couple of where there's the 3 floor plans side by side? Yeah. So this is the first floor, second floor, third floor, obviously going across. That first floor on the left, you'll see there's a very large event space that we've actually broken up to sort of have smaller things in the back. So when you look at the top corner right there is some smaller spaces, but they're larger in context to what the studios are over there. Those have been planned as kind of initially like a lot of the artists who are in my buildings will have visits from curators or museums or things like that, and they're studio visits, but they want to display a lot of work, and they were asking for spaces where they could, can I put up my own gallery for basically a week so I can do a big sale or do something like that. The sort of initial middle space where there were clean things there, that is what those were conceived in. And then as we looked at the event space overall, we realized that, like, if we have a wedding here, we need back of house, we need like a small catering kitchen, we need some of those different things there to have some opportunities there. I think those larger rooms are completely able to be used from a movement space for to use your description. I think they are not as constant of a thing, and I know some people, especially that have dance studios and stuff, like sometimes they're yoga studios and sometimes they're dance studios and sometimes they're empty for 12 hours. And those on maybe like an hourly rate basis or something like that, we have options to be able to do that. Additionally, if you see some of those other ones that are in purple on the first floor, I think I'm not opposed to basically having movement spaces in them. They're neat spaces, and as long as the light's good and it works for you. The only thing that I've had to have any considerations for in any of my other spaces are the notions of like music rehearsal, just because sound is going to travel the way that it will. But at the same time, I would not be ruling out movement spaces at all. So like that is, if you look on the far right side on the bottom, there's a big green block there that we're actually talking with a major nonprofit about taking as office space, because they're losing their office space in another arts building not too far away. And while that's not 100% committed yet, fingers crossed, looking at Angelica. But so that is, there's going to be a mixture of things there. When you have that many people in a space that is not very soundproof, you're going to have some considerations that you have to have there. But in general, like, I'm not opposed to it. And if I can't find it in this building, I might be able to find you something in one of my other buildings. And that's generally the way I've been approaching all those sorts of things. So to answer your second question, I'm actually contractually obligated to provide a lot of priority to Prince George's County residents. Part of this project is being funded with the Economic Development Incentive Fund that runs to the Economic Development Corporation of Prince George's. And Angie Rogers and Chris On have just been very, very supportive of this project and have given us a really nice forgivable loan that basically helps make this more feasible and cost effective so that we can keep the rents lower. That is almost necessary, because 3 years ago, if we were still dealing with 3% rates, I wouldn't have needed that. But now that we're paying 9% for money or whatever, it is very, very beneficial as we look to keeping those rates down. So to that end, I think 30% of utilization is for Prince George's residents, like basically by law. If I want to get this loan forgiven in 10 years, I have to do that. But in general, I haven't also even really advertised these availabilities. These are just people who are desperately looking for space that are getting my contact. And when I say I've got those commits, that's the mechanism that we're receiving those folks. So if everybody came from Mount Rainier and Brentwood, I would love it, because I wouldn't have to solve the parking problem, right? Like, yes, please bring me everyone that's within walking distance, and that'll save me a couple $100,000 in buying adjacent properties and stuff. That would be great. I love it. I don't really delineate the political line at times, because everything in the Beltway is kind of cultural DC to me. But I completely understand that the concern there, and we definitely are. It's not something we're ignoring, I guess, is the best way to say it. But in general, we try to keep the space as adaptive as possible. If you can, if you see on that drawing where the columns are and different things like that, sometimes we can cut those studios in half. Sometimes we can make them huge. The ceiling heights vary by floor. So if you're on the third floor, you get 14-foot ceilings. If you're on the second floor, you're just under 8 foot. And I think on the first floor, you're about 9.5 foot. Whereas the event space has 15-foot clear spans, 20 to the peak, probably 25 to the peak, because of the way that building is constructed. But and then there's a couple spaces where we're looking at sort of specialized studios that are former loading docks that might be 30-foot ceilings and stuff for very sort of specialized uses. And so Yeah, I hope that answers both of the questions, but I'm happy to take follow-up on it.
That was it. Thank you so much. I appreciate
You're
your
welcome.
feedback on that. That was great. And as you guys continue and like, you know, just keep it in mind. I've reached out to a bunch of art places who were originally that was their thought, and then it's like it's impossible for any artist in this area to rent space there. Like I remember getting a call from one, like, are you kidding me? Like I don't even understand how you think anybody could make and it could afford this. Like no one in the right mind could afford it. But just making sure I want to just move that forward and just continue to I understand it has to be sustainable from a financial standpoint, but anyway that there is some aspect of keeping prices affordable for renting space, that would be great.
What you're describing to me is basically the definition of unmet demand, right? Like there's so many people there that how can anybody afford this? It's because, well, there's that many people who want this stuff. So
right,
the best way to solve that is to overload supply. And boy, howdy, are we adding a whole lot of inventory to the market right now?
Right. Okay. Yeah, very true. Very true. But thank you so much. This is amazing. I can't wait to hear how it goes and when you can get it open.
Trust me, there's nothing I want to do faster. Cool. Thank you.
All right. Angelica, I don't know how we're doing on time, but
we are okay. The meeting end time was 7:45. So if anyone has any final questions, please feel free to speak up.
Well, I guess I'll put it in the chat, but I'll say it out loud. If similar to Dylan, Gateway CDC or Community Development Corporation is dealing with the same thing where we have a list of folks that we know are in need of spaces. I know Red Dirt is the same thing. So a lot of our spaces are maxed out currently that we have, and rightfully so because they're affordable spaces and nobody wants to give them up. But if you want to be on the radar for that, please send me an email at marcus.monroe@brentwoodmd.gov and I can add you to the list, and then as much details as you want to share about the type of space you're looking for and the type of art or movement space that you need, that'll be helpful.
Yeah, if I just thought of something else too, Marcus, that you just reminded me of to the question about connecting with the other art community and actually bringing in more folks from the area. The way Margaret runs Red Dirt is kind of I forget exactly what you call it, but she almost does it like a seminar, and there's a cycle that you go through there. She tries to turn people over every 3 years. And so I've been reached out to people who are in Red Dirt because they're getting ready to age out of Red Dirt and they're looking for a space to kind of grow up and move into their own studio. So I think just the way Margaret runs Red Dirt will also help aid keeping local folks working here because we're going to have additional inventory for them to move in.
Yeah, and that's a good point because the same way that Margaret graduated from Otis Street into owning a space, Gateway CDC has an incubator in Mount Rainier, that the media arts lab that basically does the same thing. So you kind of come in at tiers, and then as you grow and grow and grow, you in theory graduate to a larger space or potentially trying to own something on your own. But again, it's the same. These models are running into the same constraints where we need to now more and more people are coming in, and so Dylan's projects is a great app because it's going to now help fill some of that. But we're going to fill up Dylan's project and run into the same thing. So, Gateway CDC is really focused on expanding the amount of space that we have in the arts district. Thank you, Elena. So
right.
I'll pass it back to Angelica here.
Yeah, and just want to apologize for my technical difficulties earlier. I'm so sorry about that. And thank you for bearing with me while I was experiencing that. And thank you to the team for keeping things moving as smoothly as possible. Yeah, just want to say thank you all for participating tonight and for joining us this evening. If you all have any questions about the project, you can feel free to email me. I think the last slide had my contact info, but I can also put it in the chat. All right, that should be in the chat now. Yeah, if you all have any questions, feel free to reach out. And this meeting has been recorded. I'll figure out how we can combine the two clips from earlier and this one we have going on right now. so that the town of Brentwood can put it on their website and you all can review and share with others if you'd like. All right. Thank you and have a good rest of your evening.
Good night, folks.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.